Okay.
All right, I call the joint meeting between the Village Board, Plan Commission, um, and Public Works Utility, right, Mark? Meeting will do separate roll calls of all three. It's 7:58. Could you start with that roll call?
Yes, give me a minute here. All right, so for Village Board, we've got President Gerke
Here.
and Trustee Beal. Here. Trustee Baum.
Here.
Trustee Moonen.
Here.
Plan Commission, I'll start at this end. We've got Planner Sumwalt.
Here.
We have the Building Inspector and Plan Commissioner Ilhoffen.
Still here.
Plan Commissioner and Utility Committee Member Eberly.
I ain't going anywhere.
Okay. Plan Commissioner Howard.
Here.
And Plan Commissioner McCormick.
Here.
Plan Commissioner Lesser.
Here.
And we have Public Works and Utility Committee Member Jane Miller is down at the far end. Here. And we have Administrator Green.
Here.
And Clerk Capazzo to record the minutes.
All right. We're gonna keep this, keep it moving, as Linda said, and we're gonna keep it kind of somewhat structured here. So 6 steps to the process for the joint meeting. Tom is going to give his comments uninterrupted, uninterrupted overview and education of the sewer service areas to the committee. After that, we'll hear from John at Ellers, giving his presentation on the financing elements, which will also be uninterrupted. Then we will go around the room. Everyone can ask their questions of the professionals and staff. The questions will only be answered by them, no cross discussion. The fourth item will be, after that general discussion, we'll move on to the focus areas. Tom will again give his presentation. Once we go in those discussion of those focused areas, we will go around the room to get everyone's feedback. And then number 6, finally, everyone will have a chance to speak, and there'll be a time for open discussion between everyone up at the table here. So with that outline, Dan, you're going to tell us what we're here for tonight and the goal, right? And then
Sure.
do introductions.
Sure, yeah. So we had started this discussion at the Public Works Committee. They made a recommendation to look at a sewer service area study and potential amendment, which went to the village board for approval. So then when it got back to Plan Commission, I think there was maybe a disconnect in the fact that this originated from committees not of the Plan Commission. So right now we're looking at the Public Works saw that there was an issue with the Richmond School. I think that kind of started the original conversation, and from there it grew to, well, do we want to look at areas where it would make sense to potentially have sewer long-term as a planning tool for the village to potentially extend sewer? So that's where the conversation started, and that's where we started with a focus area first at the last Plan Commission. So I thought it better to start off by Tom from FOTH giving an explanation of sewer in general, how it's used, why it's used, looking over, what does a service area actually mean? What does capacity mean? How are these things funded from a public standpoint? And that's why we also brought John Cameron from Ellers in to also discuss the financial parts of those, because there were questions at Plan Commission that I thought could be addressed in more of a educational meeting. And actually turns out great that now we have people from the public that can hear the same thing. But just know from the public that they're probably hearing this for the first time, or a lot of these folks, just like you guys are. So it'll be a learning experience for all of us. I do ask that the public do keep their comments to themselves, as the boards can kind of ask the questions to the professionals, but definitely take notes. And then if you have any follow-up questions, contact staff, and we can certainly help get any of your questions answered. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for that prelude. Again, I'm Tom Ludwig with FOTH. With us tonight is Mike Yeager, also from my office. And then John Cameron from Ellers, and he's going to talk in a little bit. A little everything you're afraid to ask about sewers, and then some right now. A little 101 here. Yeah, and to step back a little bit on what we did, we kind of jumped in with Focus Area 1. So this is taking a step back about what we're doing here, Again, the purpose, this is a repeat for some of you. Orin, you're driving, right? You got the maps? Okay. So on the screen right now is an overview. And just to describe what you're seeing up there, it might be a little small to see from back there. You have some copies, it looks like, in the audience. We do have some hard copies too with us. The blue dashed area is planned service areas. And what that means is the Sussex treatment plant is currently sized for everything in the blue dashed areas. The blue shaded areas are everything that's in an existing sewer service area. That's a sewer service area that's been approved by the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. So those areas have already been through the process and have been approved. Excuse me. So everything in blue there, you have capacity for based on previous contracts with the Village of Sussex to treat, not necessarily conveyance to the treatment plant. So sewer service areas offer you the ability to serve those areas. It does not obligate you to those areas. That's a very important distinction to make. Just because it's in a sewer service area does not mean you have to sewer it, but it allows you in the future to serve it. So if, for example, some subdivisions have septic failures, you can then initiate the process to getting those served with sewer. The sewer pack process takes 6 months to a year. So that would be the reason why you maybe want to do a sewer service area. And the two areas in red circles, the Richmond School area, I think it's been well documented that sewer lift station has issues. So that's what been the catalyst kind of for this is, well, if we're going to look at replacing that lift station with a gravity system potentially, shouldn't we look at anything else in that area? Are there any densities, and that's the planning commission component, are there any densities that you see sewer service areas in there that you think would be suitable for sewer service? So that's the first area we're looking at, and we'll show a focus area map in a second. Looking at that first in case there are issues that come up sooner rather than later with that lift station. And then the other area that we just circled is Genesee Aggregates had asked for the area to be considered for sewer service. It was just a letter on record to the Public Works Committee. So that's why we circled that too, in that general area. So Orin, maybe go to the focus area map. So again, may be hard to see on the screen, but what we did was just try to take this in bite sizes. Area 1 is blue, focus area 1, focus area 2 is pink, yellow is 3, 4 is the existing Lisbon Sanitary District number 1, and then the green is the last focus area number 5 that we're looking at. So again, our intent is to go through this. This is anticipated to be a year-long process. And at the end of the year-long process, there'll be a public hearing. And then at that public hearing, that's when public input is solicited. And then the recommendation will go to the board, then a formal decision would be made if that whole, once that whole process is followed. So there'll be plenty of time to review and study these areas as we go along, and then the final public input at the end. I think that answered maybe one of the questions that I heard when getting here earlier. So at that, I think we can maybe turn it over to John. But so John Cameron from Ellers was just, as Dan had alluded, there were some questions about sewers, and there's some general rules of thumb, what is cost effective to sewer, what is not. What we have tried to do, that's what I was trying to recall what I was saying. Maybe go back to that map, Orin, I forgot. So those 5 areas do have likely connection points in Sussex. We're in the process of confirming those with Sussex to see where we could possibly connect. And a lot of those are gravity connections. And the most cost-effective way to convey sewage is through gravity connections. So that's, if people are wondering why we pick those particular areas, that is one reason why. But also, we picked those areas because they have been discussed and capacity has been purchased in those areas. So at that, John, I think you have something you want to presentation. Okay.
Okay, good evening, everybody. John Cameron with Ellers, and we are the village's municipal advisor. And as part of that, we really are a resource here this evening to give some preliminary, what I'll call 101 utility finance. Welcome to Utility Finance 101. So I'll give just kind of a brief overview of some general funding concepts for utilities, how projects get funded across the state. Then probably more importantly, how projects get repaid, how that financing, how that funding gets repaid. Some things to think about, but really we're here to be a resource for you. I know you're going to go into questions and I'm happy to answer or help guide you along the process as you've got questions and you think about this whole process. So if you go to the next page. So why do Wisconsin governments borrow? And that includes utilities. Generally kind of breaks down into three buckets: facilities, infrastructure, and capital equipment. Here we're talking certainly more on the infrastructure side, and that's very common for governments to borrow for projects such as utility extensions. Next slide. So different types of capital financing. One is pay as you go. You would use existing cash, existing budget dollars, save up the money, then do the project. It's efficient for very short-lived assets. Sometimes it's very difficult in most cases to save, especially for the types of projects that you're talking about for utility extensions and other types of core infrastructure costs on the sanitary sewer side. The other thing to consider is intergenerational equity. Those who paid in, who built that fund balance, may not be the ones who ultimately benefit after the asset is installed. Next page. What's more common for larger type capital projects is to issue debt to fund the project. Debt issuance preserves existing cash and resources. It takes the cost of the asset and it amortizes it over its useful life with some restrictions under state statutes in terms of how long you can go for amortization. The asset is paid for by benefiting users. It helps manage and stabilize, in this case, user rates, and is also exempt from levy limits when we talk about items that impact the general fund. Next page. There's two different types of debt issuances in the state of Wisconsin. For the most part, you've got general obligation debt and revenue bond debt. Both are perfectly acceptable for the types of capital improvements that you're talking about here on the sanitary sewer slide. Next page. General obligation debt, municipalities in the state of Wisconsin are limited to the amount of general obligation debt they can have outstanding at any one given time. And that limit under state law is 5% of your total equalized value. Just to give you some sense of magnitude, the village has plenty of general obligation borrowing capacity. You're only utilizing about 5% of your total total borrowing capacity. You've got about a little over $111 million of total geo borrowing capacity. Not that you'd go out and spend that, but that's just to give you a sense of magnitude. Under state law, general obligation debt has to be fully retired no later than 20 years from the original date of issuance. So you've got generally two different types of general obligation debt: geo promissory notes and geo bonds. If we're talking about sanitary sewer infrastructure funding that we use general obligation debt to fund, doesn't mean that's going to get paid back through property taxes, but just using that as the financing source, we'd be issuing general obligation promissory notes. Next page. The next type of financing is revenue obligations. So you're talking about sanitary sewer revenue bonds. Revenue bonds can be issued to finance any revenue producing facility or enterprise that is owned by the municipality and operated for a public purpose. The reason that we have revenue bonds that are fairly common in the state of Wisconsin is because on the general obligation side, we are limited to the amount of geo debt that we can issue. If we could issue unlimited general obligation debt, everything would be borrowed on a geo basis and repaid by user rates, property taxes, special assessments, whatever the source of repayment would be. But we don't, so we need to rely on revenue debt obligations for larger utility projects. So water, sewer, electric, stormwater, you can use them for nursing homes, housing type things, tax incremental financing projects. There's no dollar limit associated with revenue bond debt. It really comes down to what the revenues on the repayment side can support in terms of the principal and interest payments. That is the limiting factor with revenue bond debt. Its date of maturity can be no longer than 40 years, and most common, what you see in the marketplace is no more than 20 years. When you go beyond that, you really start to pay a premium on the interest rate. Next page. Revenue bond debt comes with two additional requirements compared to general obligation debt. It comes with a reserve fund requirement that usually gets baked into the overall size of the issuance. So what underwriters want to see, or those who are purchasing your debt want to see with the revenue bond debt, is that there is a source of funds set aside in case there would be some catastrophic emergency and you would not be able to pay debt. So that is a common feature. It makes revenue bond debt more expensive than general obligation debt because you're generally borrowing to satisfy that reserve fund. It also comes with a debt coverage requirement, meaning that the revenues you take in from that revenue producing facility, in this case, the sewer utility, have to be more than 100% of your principal and interest payments on an annual basis. There's also an additional bonds test that you have to satisfy at the point that you issue more revenue bond debt, meaning that you've got to demonstrate that your user rates or the revenues that are being pledged to support the debt are there to not only meet existing debt plus the new debt at the time that it's taken out. So there's just more hoops to jump with revenue bond debt. Next page. So more importantly, I think if I was in your shoes and thinking about these projects, is the borrowing is one item. How do we go about repaying the borrowing once that's been executed? And there's a number of methods that you have at your disposal. First, and this is in no particular order, is sanitary sewer user rates. You've got a sanitary sewer utility issuing debt using your user rates to repay the principal and interest payments is something that you have at your disposal. You've got to then structure the debt around the user rates, make sure that those user rates are sufficient. The asset then is spread over the entire cost of the sanitary sewer utility. And really the policy question, or the thing that you should think about with these different areas, is does the asset really benefit the system as a whole, or is it really more being installed and put in for a subset of users? Or the other thing would be, are all of these areas going to come online within the village roughly at the same time? Or is there going to be a very deliberate phased sequencing of the build out of the utility? If that's the case, whoever's in the utility first is helping carry those costs until the system expands. Next method is special assessments. The village has the ability to, under state statutes, to special assess the capital improvements to the benefiting property owners. If you go to the next page. That is an exercise of police powers, and a lien is placed on the benefiting property owner. Special assessments are generally appropriate for assets that benefit a specific area or subset of the utility. The special assessments are charged based on either front footage, acreage, or an estimate of usage, RECs, or residential equivalent connections. Those are the common items, but as we get into the weeds, certainly Tom and others from the engineering side are much more knowledgeable on those methods than I am. It's typically payable in lump sum or in installments. And you can specify that period of time at the board level of how you want to recover those assessments. Oftentimes municipalities put in special policies that govern special assessments, and that's one thing to consider, especially if this is going to be a phase type approach. It gives future boards a roadmap for how you like special assessments administered and repaid over a period of time. You'd also have the ability to defer those special assessments until a property connects to the sanitary sewer system. A word of caution on that, though. You really are, and when we get involved with financings that involve special assessments, what we're trying to do oftentimes is structure the debt, those principal and interest payments, around the repayment of those special assessments. So if you're deferring those for an extended period of time, you're oftentimes deferring principal. We can defer principal, we can't defer interest. So the interest would have to be carried either through the utility or some other method, potentially through the general fund, until those special assessments come in. So you've got to be cognizant of that, and you also really need to have a good plan so that you're not sitting here many years from now thinking, okay, we still don't have connections to the system. We've got to refinance this debt and keep stretching it along until we get something going here. So I would be very cautious with deferred type special assessments, because you do want to match the payments to the expected revenues that's coming in. Next one is impact fees and connection fees. These are one-time fees that are paid generally at the issuance of a building permit that recognize the growth share of new capital facilities. And that could be up to 100% of the facility if it really is intended to serve and benefit new growth. If you go to the next page. It is, as I mentioned, payable at the issuance of a building or occupancy permit. Impact fees require what's called a public facilities needs assessment document. That is the document that gets prepared in advance of establishing the impact fee. Impact fees also have, under state law, an 8-year period of time to spend them or refund them. Generally, impact fees and connection fees are used for larger regional assets or oversizing of sanitary sewer mains. That's generally because they, again, are triggered at the issuance of the building or occupancy permit, whereas a special assessment is an automatic lien on the property. So it doesn't have to be, but it's generally used for larger regional type facilities. The other thing, like special assessments, if you're talking on deferring them, is that impact fees are really only as good as the connections to the system. Okay, they require building permits to be pulled. They require connections to be made to the sanitary sewer system to trigger the payment. The nice thing about a special assessment compared to an impact fee or a connection fee is you have the lien on the property. That's the big difference between a connection fee, an impact fee, and a special assessment. I think that might be the last slide. Okay.
Yep.
So with that, I'll turn it back over. But again, happy to answer questions, happy to be a resource.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so before we move into the focus areas, we're going to go around the room and ask anyone if they've got general questions on what was presented there. And Mark, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna start at the end of the table there. Jane, you wanna start and we'll work our way down?
I just wanted to know if you could maybe expound on the sewer pack relationship on this whole effort and how that plays into the overall planning and potential timing of any kind of sewer extensions?
Sure. So Sewer Pack, the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, they approve all sewer service areas in southeastern Wisconsin. So they, in that capacity, they work as an arm to the DNR. So what they're looking for is conformance with what's called the Regional Water Quality Management Plan. So what they would do as part of their overall review is, once we come up to some conclusions at the end of this, make the recommendation, they would review it in conformance with the Water Quality Management Plan, first of all. And they also, they look at if it's in conformance with the master planning. And, you know, one important element in this is what Oren is heading up is the comprehensive plan update. So they'll look to see that it's commensurate with that, the amount of flows that we're estimating, that it's commensurate with that, the land use planning. Then they also look at population projections. They just want to make sure it's not out of whack, if you will. And then also that it's within the capacity that's already been reserved at Sussex, which is the regional treatment facility. And actually, Sussex has to make the request to Sewer Pack on behalf of Lisbon as the regional facility. So And as part of that process, it's the drafting of a letter just indicating to sewer pack, this is our findings. Then that kicks in their process, and that process takes, like I said, it takes 6 to 12 months at times. Depends where you hit their quarterly meetings too. They only have quarterly meetings that it goes before the commission, but staff will do their thing for most of that time and then get it on a quarterly planning commission. Then they'll make their recommendation.
But it's purely a plan, the efforts we're doing right now is purely a planning thing. It's not saying that sewer is coming into a specific area next week or a year from now or 3 years from now.
Absolutely, you're correct. Yep. And one thing I didn't mention was mentioning Sussex treatment plant. It reminded me that the capacity that Lisbon has purchased on average is almost 900,000 gallons a day. And to date, current flow is just over 100,000 gallons a day, roughly. So just over about 10% of what Lisbon has purchased, is being used right now. So.
Good for you, Jane. Kurt, anything you want to ask?
Yeah, so I, from an educational perspective, educating me for not understanding, but there's a couple types. There's gravity sewer systems that you talked about, and then there's lift stations, which is what I think we have at Richmond School and maybe here at the firehouse that have failed. So can you explain a little bit the difference between gravity and the lift stations?
Sure. Gravity system is just that. I mean, it sounds glib there, but it's a gravity pipe that flows to the treatment plant versus a lift station is used if the terrain topography is such that you can't achieve that gravity system to the plant. So, or if you're leapfrogging areas, probably, which is the case for right here, is you can get gravity from this area all the way down to the Highway K sewer connection with Sussex, but there was a need to serve this, have this as an approved sewer service area, and just pump it right to the system. So that's kind of a way just to leapfrog, certain areas to get it right to a gravity system. Once it's in Sussex system, it flows by gravity to the plant. So they're used as just intermediate, or if basically looking at the ground topography, if you can't get gravity, which is reliable, electricity is out, then it's still flowing. Lift stations, you have to have backup. They're operation and maintenance heavy. They rely on electricity. You have to check on them. There's fats, oil, and grease, which is part of the problem with this lift station. It affects the pumps and the capacity, fills the line. So you try to put in gravity systems whenever you can. They're designed such that the velocities are self-cleaning, although you still have to be conscious of fats, oil, and grease. But that's kind of an overview of the two differences.
So the lift station for the Richmond school system, I'm assuming, does that, after it gets lifted up, does it flow into Sussex a sewer system?
Yeah, their force main goes right into.
So even though they have a lift station, it's still flowing into that.
Well, it's by pressure. It's flowing by pressure to that gravity system, discharges into it, and then it flows by gravity.
And how long ago was the lift station for the Richmond school installed?
I think it's 30
Does anybody know?
years, 30 something.
No, it was 15 to 18-ish years ago.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the pipe from Richmond School and here to Sussex.
From Richmond School to Sussex, I think it was the early 2000s or maybe 2000 was when that was put in.
So it's failing now. So what's the life expectancy of a system that has a lift station included in it?
Well, if there's not a fats, oil, and grease problem, pumps can last 20 years. But right now we're running through pumps very often.
Multiple times a year.
Yeah,
So it's-
once a year, basically.
Well, Richmond School didn't get a grease trap until they remodeled the kitchen, which is about 5 or 6 years ago. So everything was going into that system.
Okay, so it's being addressed now. And that force main will need to be cleaned, and we've had discussions on that on the side, that it's gonna be cleaned with either some ice picking, you flush ice through there, and, or chemical treatment. And we had an initial discussion with Sussex on that just last week, so they're aware of it, that's an issue also. But, you know, that is, it's an extreme case. That's, it's a pretty small force main. It's only a 2-inch, I hear, force main. It's 3. Yeah, I heard, well, Sussex thought it was 2. And it's constricted by the grease buildup. That sounds like it's historical. Maybe there hasn't been as much recently, but it still needs to be cleaned. But that's a long-term liability that, you know, if you want a long-term solution, you would extend gravity to this area.
And the gravity that's being proposed is to come up Highway K.
Yeah, and not to pick on your words, not being proposed, but, you know, at this level, you know,
From the planning
it's
perspective.
being planned. Yeah, yeah. And and sorry, again, not, we can pick on your, when we say propose, that means we're proposing that to the board for action kind of thing. But this is planning level. Focus area 1 was, and we'll get to it in a moment here, where we just look at connecting by gravity to the Sussex system up Highway K and what that could conceivably pick up.
But the reason why we're having this discussion about planning is because of the issue with the Richmond School and the lift station.
Well, that initiated, but, you know, as, we showed on this map, there's, you know, going back to the original sewer agreements to serve Lisbon Sanitary District 1, which I was around when that sewer went in Sussex to serve that back in 1988. You know, that was the first capacity that Lisbon purchased from Sussex. And then there was subsequent, between the sewer agreement, then the boundary cooperation agreement, and then the incorporation. You know, we've gone through many layers to come up with that map and try to come up with that scorecard of what you have. And that's where I came up with the 900,000 gallons a day, and you're only using just over 100,000 gallons. So SewerPAC only really wants one request, and they are encouraging the village to clean this up, if you will. Right now, there's no urgency right now, Sussex, other than the school and what to do here. But Sussex's plant's at about 50% right now capacity. We still have another 50%, so they don't plan on doing any upgrades to it. But because you have that reserve capacity, anything they do, Lisbon has a share of it. They're planning lift station in the corporate center upgrade coming up next year. Lisbon will have a share of that cost. Any other capacities that are in agreements that they put in on behalf of Lisbon, you know, they'll eventually want payment on that. You know, depending on sewer service areas that you may or may not choose here as part of this process.
All right, Sean, questions at this point?
Yes, for the Ayers representative, please.
Yeah, John?
Like, I think everybody's here since a lot of it, and this is in quote unquote, as we're talking a planning scenario, and we're talking about planning a corrective action for a school.
John, is there, some people down here having a harder time hearing you, if you could
Okay,
speak
yeah.
up.
And we're planning a corrective action for a school specifically. Would it not also that the Arrowhead School District be maybe taking some of this cost as an operation and bonding out versus the village?
Well, really, the owner of the system is the one that would be taking on and financing the assets. So generally, you don't have the ability to finance something you don't own. So what's typical in most situations is the utility, the municipality would be doing the financing, but then if it's benefiting a specific party, potentially recovering that cost from that party. And one method would be special assessment.
Okay, So it would be a special assessment that the village would then say to Arrowhead, because of the, no, it's just some explanation.
Richmond School, not Arrowhead District.
Well, Richmond is an Arrowhead
No,
school.
No,
it's
It's the
own
prop,
district.
the property owner, I think is what you mean. So the property, so the school, just to say the school, yeah, the school.
Okay, I was just trying to get some clarification for everybody here on what it is, and my apologies if it was a little bit more of a basic question.
No, that's all right.
And number two is, in terms of a planning application, what, we've had some things that we would then have the capacity saying, okay, we size in a planning scenario, this pipe at 3, 4, 5 inches or what it would be. That would then mean that we would then have the there would be, it wouldn't be mandatory, but we have the option of a subdivision or an area to then have that hookup going in, correct?
Correct. Yeah, if I understood your scenario, yeah. Yeah, once you have the sewer service area, it would allow you then to, the next step would be is to, depending how all the sewer service areas land, you size that pipe based on that estimated flow, and then that would require a DNR sewer extension permit. And when that's submitted then to, that's also submitted to sewer pack. Another reason why they require this 208 plan, it's called, is to then compare that sewer extension to what they've already approved in the area, and that process is very quick. Another reason why you want to get this cleaned up.
And a number of people in some areas might have a septic system that might be older or ancient. Would they have that option to then be a hookup if they're in that, if in district area?
Correct.
Sure.
I don't know if I have any questions at this point, other than, the original map you have up there, the areas up by Wooded Hills and that was a need based on those subdivisions having failing septic systems. The other area south of there was a need because of the quarry blastings and they needed septic systems. Then there's two other areas that were designated later on that designate undeveloped lands for the sewer area for future development. I understand that. This map encompasses a lot of existing residential properties that may not have failing septic systems for 20 or 30 or 40 years out, if even then. That's my concern, is extending. I think we need to condense it in undeveloped lands so the future property owners and the developers take on the cost of the infrastructure and the revenue to pay for sewer, as opposed to those of residents who have perfectly fine septic systems that they paid a lot of money for.
So I think we're gonna have the discussion on that coming up at the
So
next
that was
thing.
my
but-
only comment,
but
was
no,
based on the other map that he had up there of how the history of that came about. And
So if that was framed in a word of a question, I mean, what are the benefits and concerns about that approach? Because there's certainly both.
Sure. Yeah, and that's exact feedback we want during these sessions of each one, that this area, we never need any sewer over here, or this one's just developed here. Based on, to answer your question though, is, again, this doesn't obligate you to serve those areas, to call it a sewer service area.
right, I understand that,
Yeah.
because that's like the area up 164, the Hillside Bridge development was designated as, it could be sewer, and the developer opted not to use sewer in there.
Yeah.
But it's the areas where they're already developed that.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, and you may want to, we're going to talk about focus area coming up. That may be a very short discussion. Just say, we don't envision any sewer service areas being amended there. I don't want to, intercept that discussion, but that might be what you come up with and say, area 3. Well, that was a former, I think that's the former corporate center area, or no, or not, or.
Oh, the village center area, yeah,
Village-
would be within
Village,
area
sorry,
3.
Village Center, not corporate,
Yep.
Village Center.
Yep.
Or that's where you paid for some cost sharing, and that's the history we don't have, that you all might have, that we need to hear. And so we'll get that feedback in each area, and we're not asking you to come out with a marker and start circling parcels or anything, you know, we'll take your feedback on each area and then come up with a recommendation on what you may want to consider in the end as an amendment to sewer pack. That's how we envision this overall process.
Can you elaborate though on what Sherry, asked about, like, what are we have people that might be concerned if they are an existing subdivision, if we add them to the sewer service area. So if we don't think they're gonna need it for 20 years, why do you do it now versus, what's the cost benefit if you will? Like that's what we need. That's been a lot of our debate previously. So if you can maybe speak to that more.
Right, and I'm sorry if I'm being a little repetitive in this, but if you don't do it, then you have to start from scratch on that whole sewer pack discussion that we just walked through, that it could take up to a year to get them. Let's say parade of horribles, you have a subdivision there, all the septic systems are failing, and they don't all fail at the same time. You're staring at 30, 40 grand, and to put in a mound system, you get a subdivision to agree that we got failing septics, we want sewer. Well, we're not in a sewer service area. Oh, okay. Well, then starts the process. And in the meantime, you've got failing systems. There's groundwater concerns then, and the county might get involved at that point. So that's the downside of doing it. The plus side is you at least have them in a sewer service area. There's been some forethought of how they could be served by this particular gravity segment. You've accounted for an amount of flow that if they do run into trouble, they can get service. But until the village board decides that you're doing sewer, you're not doing sewer.
How
So,
much does the extra idle capacity kind of cost us?
pardon?
How much does like the idling, well, based on her thing, if we say we're doing a bigger area than we think, does
Well,
that cost us money to have that area so big?
well, there'll be a reconciliation at the end if it flows. So if you recall, I mentioned there's 900,000 gallons of average flow. You're using just over 100,000. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but when we get through all this and the densities that I'm hearing we're talking about, you're not going to be above that capacity, but you're already carrying that capacity for that 900 right now. So, that's where it's a little iterative process. We need to know what you're thinking in terms of densities. We'll come back with the flows, and at the end we'll say, hey, you come up with one scenario is, hey, you're over 900,000. That would require an amendment to the treatment plant facility plan. Do you really want to do that? Maybe you want to relook at some areas to stay under that. The other one is, I think the more likely scenario, we're going to get through this, you're going to be under the 900,000, but you're then maximizing a capacity you've been paying for, and the cost that I mentioned before that you're going to be foreseeing. They're coming. They're going to upgrade the station. I don't have an estimate yet for you, but the more of a user base you have to share in that, the better. To help pay for that. If those areas that you indeed want them to be sewered. So
Sure, that was it for you for questions at this point?
I guess I just have one clarification, and for me as well as maybe the residents out there. So for the capacity, we're paying for that property owner wide, village wide. That's all on our tax bill, I believe, we have a payment for.
Let's have that be a question.
Capacity.
Well, the utility is paying for the capacity. So there was a facilities upgrade that was just done that cost close to 800,000 or just over. And so that currently falls on the sewer. And so the sewer is
Okay, so
the sewer user.
past that, it was village wide that property owners paid for the capacity. I'm not talking usage or the infrastructure to put it in, just the capacity portion that they bought. So I
They purchased
misinformed
the village purchased the capacity, but now because we have the capacity when there is an upgrade to the facility, those upgrades are paid by the utility. And because that's the only, because they're direct beneficiaries of any facility upgrades. So,
I was misinformed then.
so to Tom's point, we're
Was
only using
miseducated.
we're only using a tenth of our capacity. That's 10 times more ability to spread the costs of any of those upgrades, like he's talking about the lift station that's in next year. The more users you have, the easier it is to fund those projects.
I think it's a point to clarify her question, though. You want to know who the utility is.
No.
Who's the utility? though?
That wasn't my question. I thought at one point in time, when Sussex, when Lisbon purchased capacity from Sussex, that was a line item on our real estate property taxes.
It's a sanitary district. There was a small amount.
And that's no
Like
longer
the-
there?
Correct. once
Okay,
in the
so I
village.
was not
No.
miseducated.
There-
Thank you. It's just not there anymore. Okay. That answered my question.
Joe? Ryan?
So if this would become a system service area, right, you do your study, does that mean, and you didn't, let's say you included Mountain Shadows up here. Would that mean that, okay, we've got this much capacity that's gonna come out, but they don't really need sewer at this time, but Richmond School does, and so does the fire department. How would that work? Or I guess, does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, so you can get sewer to Richmond School and here, but then you're not gonna start ripping up the roads in Mountain Shadows right away to put in sewer. Is that something that can work that way? Or once you're committed to getting sewer, you have to put in sewer for everything that you've,
No, if I understood your scenario there, Mount Shadows, I think, is further to the northwest of,
like right over here?
Just,
Yeah.
just past the school.
Yeah,
okay, I'm pointing towards them, but yeah, up, yeah.
it's over there somewhere.
Yeah, over there. So if you extend the sewer up K and it doesn't front Mountain Shadows, then that's not an issue. You don't have to extend the pipe all the way. You can extend it just to the station
You
and the
could-
school.
That could be part of the calculations, that subdivision could be part of the calculations. So you might have a 12 or 15-inch pipe that goes down to Highway K, but you don't have to run it into the subdivision until there's a need for it.
Right,
I think that's what a lot of the people are a little
Right.
nervous about,
right.
that this whole thing is gonna make them do this right away.
No,
And then the follow-up question is, there's some vacant land now that's over this way. It could be developed, so you could tap into that same sewer and still leave Mountain Shadows alone, right?
correct.
And then my final question is, what determines the subdivision to have to get sewer? Obviously, it's probably failing septic systems, but is there a percentage or is there a request from the subdivision or?
And answer that on both, existing and new subdivisions, if you would.
Well, it's a village board policy decision, really. I mean, there's no, failing septics, you could, if there's a well-documented, failure from, the county, from the sanitarian that, 90% of these septics are failing, there may, then they may cause something to be done, but I have not seen anything like
So it'd
that.
have
Usually it's
It'd have to be pretty bad.
have to be pretty bad, and it's a village board decision. It's a policy decision. And if for anything new, I don't know your ordinances offhand, but it doesn't sound like you can do subdivisions without sewer and water. So again, it's a policy decision. Unless you dictate in any of these upcoming areas that it is your intention to have this as a sewer and water development, then speaking out of turn here a little bit, by ordinance, the village attorney may take exception with what I'm saying here, but I think village board policy is probably the best stated. You can designate areas, if it's in a sewer service area, they say you can designate as the village's intention to have any new development require sewer and water.
And I'll interject, the comprehensive plan would be one of the documents that would be a place for that type of policy to be housed.
I guess my biggest The biggest thing you already answered was that they're not gonna automatically be made just because Richmond or the fire station would have a need to hook up.
Right. And any sewer extension, you'd have policy decisions on, anything, once you do put a sewer in a given right of way, if there is a building structure within 500 feet of the sewer, by state statute, you have to connect. So, yeah, so it's deemed benefited, you deem it as benefited by the sewer, and long before you do any of that, you'd have a special assessment policy on how to handle all this. You wouldn't want to handle all that on the fly.
I got a bunch of them. They're given to me by constituents and also my own thought, and some of them repeat prior questions, but I'll just fire at you anyways. Does being included in the sewer service area mean the village is going to make me convert my private system to public sewer?
No.
Thank you. What should our residents expect if we choose to do nothing more than staying with our current sewer service area? I'm talking like what fiscally, what does it look like in the future for current users? Should we do nothing, no planning, just stay with status quo? I mean, that might be more of an Ellers question.
I think so, but maybe to show John well, maybe you know where the existing users are. It's primarily was in Sanitary District 1, and then this station in the school.
Yeah. I think fiscally, it would be anything that would happen within the current sewer service area would likely be undertaken by the utility and paid for within the confines of the utility.
Is this process a healthy planning process for communities to undertake, and do communities under normal circumstances undertake this process?
Yes.
This is both to Ellers and Foth. What is the future of our rates for current users if we do nothing? Are they gonna go down? Are they gonna go up?
Well, rates generally don't go down. And that's because you're making sure that your user rates are sufficient to recover 100% of the cost to operate the utility. So generally, your operating and maintenance costs rise on an annual basis. You want to make sure that your user rates are keeping up with that. So we did a long-range cash flow analysis for the utility some time ago that showed rates staying relatively stable with some inflationary increases over time.
If new sewers get placed onto the sewer service area or system, who is paying for the new system?
Well, that's kind of why you're here tonight. That's a policy question and discussion. There's a number of ways to go about doing it. It really depends on, I think, what areas you're going to end up serving and what the benefit of the mains are relative to who would be paying.
This is more towards both. With only using 10% of our purchase capacity, are there any impacts that we should be aware of as a village?
Impacts in terms of
Finances, liabilities?
Well, I think we touched upon the finances a little bit. Any costs that you have are going to go into the cash flow analysis that John just described, so that those have to be paid. So if you don't expand it, you have your denominator is smaller, right? So those costs go up, and it's good. I know it's kind of a general term, but it's good planning. It's good planning to have your comp plan. A big component of it is public utilities, sewer and water. So you're going through the process of updating your comp plan. Marrying this with it is natural. So it's good planning.
Why did Lisbon buy so much capacity so many years ago, and was it a smart move?
That's a good question. That I don't have an answer to. The forensics that we've done with going through all these agreements, at some point, somebody, I think we heard some of the reasons before that was envisioned. I think some areas were envisioned that they would be sewer. They didn't develop that way. Some thought there was septic failures. Likely, septic systems don't last forever, conventional systems. And then, mound is the replacement system. what the life of those, that those may have a life of them, they have a life also, not may, they have a life also. So that's really long-term, understandably, but, if you have the capacity, at a plant that you're adjacent to, the gravity sewer these are improvements that this pipe that lasts 80 to 100 years. So it's a longer term, fix, if you will.
Here's a question. It's kind of a two-part question. What does the liability in reality look like when the sewer main on Richmond Road is no longer functioning properly? I think what they mean is
What happens?
when it's no longer able to pass sewage.
Yeah, if we're in an emergency situation, we gotta replace the pumps, put a force main over the top of the ground until you can come up with, a longer term solution. And, again, it's probably good money after bad at that point. You're doing an interim solution and then you probably replace it with another interim solution because the quickest thing to do is put another lift station in with more substantial force main, likely following the same route, unless you do something with a gravity sewer.
You guys may not know this one, but explain the current cost sharing and maintenance agreement between Richmond School and Village of Lisbon. So I don't know.
That I don't know.
535.
Yep. So there is a current cost sharing agreement for let's just say bills between the school and the village. So there is currently an agreement in place that they share in the large part of what the cost to run this system is.
To clarify, 65% to the school,
Yep.
35% to the
Right.
village.
Right.
And when you say school, you're talking about taxpayers that support the school. So not all residents of
No.
Lisbon support Richmond.
School.
Right, so we're talking the same thing with Lisbon. So whoever's paying Lisbon's taxes, whoever's paying Richmond's taxes, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you,
So if you're in both, you're paying both.
you're paying it all. Yeah.
Why is it not a fiscally responsible move to study just undeveloped areas?
You say that again, why is it not? Or
Why is it- well, let me clarify. Is it a smarter move to study developed and undeveloped areas at the same time, or just do undeveloped areas as they come along? What does the fiscal impact look like?
Fiscal impact. I'll let John try to answer that one. But I think it's a policy thing. As you go through these areas, that may be the result of what you're doing is you may say, we're not going to reserve any capacity for these subdivisions, but we have this whole area here. Let's use our whole capacity here. And then, hey, Sussex, we don't want to use all this other capacity. We want to use it all over here for a new area. In terms of the impacts of that, that's where the impact fees come into play, an impact fee study or reserve capacity assessment. You do it by an area-wide basis. The area-wide basis can pay for the oversizing of the sewer. Then you have special assessment. It's a component of all three: special assessments, impact fees, reserve capacity assessments. I guess impact fees and RCAs are pretty similar, but special assessments would be on residential equivalent connections that John described. You typically try to base that on an 8-inch sewer that goes up and down the streets. You come up with a residential equivalent special assessment because you don't charge them for the oversizing. So it's a combination. So
I also want to just chime in on the development pattern of the area. So it would be easier if we just had a couple sections or quarter sections of the village that were completely undeveloped and we were saying, okay, we want to open up, potential development to that area and expand a sewer service area to that area. Based on the development pattern in the village, you have vacant parcels or farmed parcels, if you will, that have the potential to be future residential development intermingled with existing subdivisions and existing other development. And so when you're looking at a sewer service area, you don't want to just pick the undeveloped areas. You want a clean, broad stroke, if you will, as far as your boundaries of it. In the past, it has been done where a very specific property was added. That's the case for Richmond. And there was as Tom explained, a specific solution prescribed to getting that individual piece sewered without having the sewer service area include some of the land around it and the land getting to it. But when we talk about the land use plan and the development pattern, some of these areas that had sewer service area prescribed for them developed differently than what maybe people originally had predicted that it would. So some of the areas that are in existing sewer service area are already developed, and they developed with subdivisions that don't have sewer. And that's allowed to happen. But just when we're talking about, do we just look at the undeveloped areas or the developed areas too? The sewer service area can include both. And I think in certain scenarios where you were talking about good planning practices, you would include both. You wouldn't just include the undeveloped areas, even though those are the ones that maybe would potentially only be served are the undeveloped areas. Again, you can have existing development in a sewer service area and it never gets served by that sewer. That's a potentiality.
I would just add from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, the thing that you need to think about is the installation of sanitary sewer mains relative to the time period that people are going to connect. Because if you're going to finance these assets, you need to think about when people are going to connect and how the debt is going to get paid. All right. So if you're going to say, we're going to go in, we're going to install sewer mains in this area, but we're not going to require people to connect, or we don't think people are going to connect for quite some time, know that the debt still has to get paid. That's the thing you need to think about. If I was in your shoes, that's the heart of the issue that I would be thinking about.
So you have a sewer service area designated. Say most of the sewer service area is currently undeveloped. Do you have to put the infrastructure through there now or wait until the developers come in to request development? And then wouldn't that cost of extending the infrastructure to that development be borne by the developer? I don't know.
I'm not sure I was following your hypothetical there, but,
So say,
if
the area up there that's to the north underneath that circle, most of that's undeveloped.
okay,
Sewer goes up to, I think, up to Good Hope is where Sussex ends. So say that someone wanted to develop north of there on some of that vacant land. Wouldn't the developer pay to extend that up to the property they're trying to develop?
that's a village board policy decision. That would likely be a good negotiating point with that particular developer. And, that would be a great first stance, I would think.
So in line with that, then, if we're looking at some of these other focus areas, would the infrastructure have to go over to those or wait until there is a request for it to be from a developer, where they're mostly vacant land?
Well, I think like what I described before, if I understand your question, we've identified areas that have distinct connection points. So they are somewhat cost effective to be able to serve now with some minimal extensions and some verification with Sussex that there's capacity. So, that scenario of you described of a developer wanting to connect and sees a chance to develop a higher denser area or commercial or something, a higher water intense use, then that would be something that they would entertain. It's been done. I've seen that in other communities where developer sees an opportunity. It's worth it to them to just do the sewer extension. There's still policy decisions along the way though, if you're passing existing development that need to be addressed through the things we just talked about. So I think I answered your question.
Mark, anything else on the new list?
No.
Uh,
I think it's, what's a typical percent oversizing? I know we're at use 10% and we're got 90% free.
No.
What should you?
There's a cost to it. It's
Yeah.
not free.
No, I'm.
Available.
Yeah, available.
But I'm saying like, what's a normal village or something like our size go over? If we're using 10% right now, do we really need 90% not being used? And like, how frequently can you change that number? Is that a 5-year?
Can we sell back any of our excess capacity?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no. No, I mean, anything negotiable, right? But this is capacity that you told Sussex you needed. So, practically speaking, I think that's a difficult ask.
We have 900,000 gallons capacity. We're only using 100,000. We're not gonna be able to sell back that 800,000 is what is realistically what we're hearing here.
Yeah, I mean, really what would need to happen from a practical standpoint is Sussex would need that capacity. Because why would they purchase it back? I mean, that would be the question on the flip side, right? If they had development that was coming in that was driving that and they needed it, they would likely approach you and say, hey, we know you're not using your capacity. We'll buy it. We need it. You know, otherwise, why are we buying it?
Oh, Menominee Falls, potentially.
Say another party, Menominee Falls, anybody else who connects into that system, that's the economics of it.
Then are all these areas that you have highlighted here all work with gravity? Is that, there's no force mains and lifters and all that?
For the most part, Mike's been studying the topography.
Mike, can you go up to the mic so anyone on Zoom can hear you? Thank you.
Yeah, I've only really looked at focus area 1 so far because we haven't had information from Sussex and their sanitary sewer system. So I've only looked at focus area 1, and that pink line is roughly everything that can serve or be served through gravity along a sanitary sewer along K. So.
Yeah, Sussex says, that's right. Sussex has just recently provided us with all the sewer data to be able to answer that question.
Question, somebody else asked, or one of the residents asked, can they not do water? Is that an option to do sewer and let people opt out of water because they like their well water?
Again, policy decision by the board, you know, that is, you don't have to do that unless your ordinances say otherwise.
But just to be clear, your response would be that everything we're talking about now is sewer solely focused.
Correct,
So water is not part of this discussion whatsoever.
correct.
What's an average minimum acre size that makes sense to have sewer?
Well, I mean, I alluded to rules of thumb, and John, I don't know if you want to chime in, but rules of thumb are, well, the higher the density, the smaller the lot, the more units you have to help pay for any extension of sewer. 8-inch sewer main is gonna be like $250 a foot, you know, so you're dividing that in half, but each side of the street. So if you got 100 foot of frontage, if you got 200 feet of frontage, that unit is paying, you know, that much more. So, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, we can give you examples, maybe the best way, and Oren can chime in here based on his experience. You know, you go to city lots, they're 1/8 acre lots, or even smaller, plan unit developments.
Small.
No, a quarter acre is a good size. It makes it more cost effective. You just get less cost effective as there's 1/2 acre, 3/4 starts to get a little pricey. I used to live in a 3/4 sewered lot. Acre sewered lot, you know, that your connection fees and everything are a little higher. And so it starts, you know, acre starts to get on the upper end. I don't know if that's what you've seen.
Yeah, I was just curious, like when it starts to become, you know, is an 1.5 acres, 2 acres, say that's not even really cost.
That's not, it kind of becomes cost prohibitive. Oren, do you have some, your experience?
I mean, to ask that question slightly differently. So if they're allowed to do 40,000 square foot lots right now on private septic, if the developer is allowed to do 20,000 square foot lots, does that become attractive to them enough to pay for the sewer?
I would say the point of the exercise with sewer is to allow more density.
And
The whole point of doing it is to allow more density.
But I think that's the crux of the question is how much smaller do the lots need to get to have that be payoff? Is there a rule of thumb there?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's gonna depend on your value of your lots and all of that, but
Right. Right, I mean, there's a lot of Franklin where you did a lot of planning or
Yep.
Can't do it.
half acre lots everywhere, right?
Yeah, quarter acre to half acre,
I
yeah.
don't know that it ever, I mean, it comes down back to the,
25,000.
how you're going to recover the cost. I mean, it's not that it pays for itself, it's just obviously that you're spreading it out over a larger base. So, if you're special assessing, how are you going to do it? If you're doing it on a front footage basis and you've got acre and a half lots, well, then you got a lot of front footage, so you're gonna end up with larger special assessments. So it comes back to the amount of users that you're spreading the cost over. I mean, obviously, the more dense it is, the more users you have.
But from a regional planning standpoint, looking at sewer pack, their long range planning, they prescribe sewer. They would like to see it in areas like this where you're near a treatment facility plant and you're a growing community, that's going to be experiencing more rooftops being built.
Except that Lisbon is a community that prides itself on being more rural, look like,
I'm
which are bigger
I'm
lots. which-
speaking from the standpoint of what's in existing, I'm just speaking from what's in existing plans.
So we're gonna have an open discussion on
And
I mean, we have conflicting points, so we'll talk about that. Any other questions you have, Rob?
To finish let me just finish my thought on that. Where sewer pack is coming from is that when you concentrate septic systems, you have the potentiality for,
Let's keep this, okay, go ahead.
you have the potentiality for contaminating groundwater. So sanitary sewer systems are beneficial because they keep effluent out of the ground and they send it to a treatment plant where it gets treated before it gets released into local waterways. It's an environmental issue. The whole topic of sanitary sewers comes back to water quality. By having areas served by sewer, you're having less concentration of septic systems. Even when septic systems are operating, a brand new one at its best capacity, if they're concentrated in an area, you can have potential issues with groundwater. Depending on the concentration, this is an area that's being studied. There's more and more things coming out on it. But there are existing areas where there's been studies done in the state of Wisconsin where concentrated septic systems have issues as it relates to local groundwater. I'm not saying that's happening here. It's obviously not happening everywhere, but that's where there can be a concern, and that's where you get recommendations from your regional planning authority who looks at things from a very high level of, hey, if you're in a growing area near an existing available treatment plant, we would recommend that you guys develop with sewer. That doesn't mean that your community wants to do that or has to do that. It just means that from a regional standpoint, it's being recommended.
Yeah, just thinking from a planning, so a lot of our subdivisions have, mixed, if it's not feasible to go anything over 2 acres, then we might as well just pencil it off and not even look at it. Instead of wasting money and time figuring out that we can do it, and then it's obviously too expensive.
All right,
That's all I got.
so Brian asked this, but I want to kind of ask it in a different way, because I think this is a recurring theme that we have. We have an existing subdivision. If we put the existing subdivision into the sewer service area and it goes 20 years without needing to be served, without wide scale failures, there's nothing that says you have to add those houses to sewer if the sewer pipe's not there at a certain time. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned this a little bit, but how often do you see wide scale failures happening at the same time? And if you don't see them at the same time and individual houses are replacing their mounds, doesn't that become difficult to have everyone kind of have the failures at the same time to force or to have it make sense to have people hook up?
So how often? I guess the first part of your question. I mean,
Do you see it?
personally, yeah, I Village Atlanta. Back when that interceptor was first extended, with the high bedrock and the failing septic systems, the E. coli was getting into the wells. So
it's out there. So that's the reason to add the existing subdivisions, is because it does happen at times.
right.
Okay. And then there's a concern about undersizing mains to Richmond School, if we want to extend beyond Richmond School, how much of a concern should that be? I mean, because again, you don't want to put in a main at a certain size and once it's that size, you're realistically not going to replace that main. But how does that concern about having it be large enough versus never going to use that full oversized main? How do you balance those two?
Well, at the time of the extension, I think this is, what is it, Mike, a 15-inch extension? So, I mean, you're talking about 15, difference between a 15 and an 8-inch. You could put a 15-inch, size it large enough for this pink sewer shed area. And then what you would be carrying is the oversizing cost from an 8 to a 15, which is, you're talking PVC, you're not talking much difference in costs. So you're just carrying a minor cost over time.
But when you go to do the sewer extension, as an example, down at Quick Trip, right there, there's a 15-inch pipe. To extend that pipe towards this area, you have to justify the size of the pipe. You can't just arbitrarily put in, as an example, not saying this is what's gonna happen. If you put in a 12-inch pipe, when you do the calculations and you do the engineering plans, you send those into DNR, they review them. They're saying what area at what density is going to go into that pipe. And if you can't justify it, they're not going to approve. But at the same time, if you put in an 8-inch pipe from Quick Trip at 164 and you run it out here, you've determined that's all you're going to get. You're not going to go out there and change it next year to a 12 and then to a 15 or an 18. That's why this planning takes time, and the decisions which would be made by the Village of Lisbon are setting the line in the sand. And if it's decided by the village board and the rest of the village that you don't want to develop a certain amount of area, that's what you size the pipe for. You don't go back. You can't take the pipe with a pipe extender and make it bigger. And at the same time, you're not going to get approvals to make a big pipe if their development is going to be this size. So that's what the reason is behind all this intricate planning. And there's a number of decision points that are made through the process by the village of what they're going to do. You get one chance to do it. And if you don't do it right, you're set forever. That's why these things are not black and white decisions. It has to do with comprehensive plans. It has to do with projected growth, projected densities. That's how you do this.
All right, so Tom, you're the expert we have here tonight. I mean, so that if that you kind of mentioned the 8-inch versus the 15-inch, and that was kind of part of Joe's what he's talked about. You said the cost would be relatively minimal between the 8-inch and 15-inch.
Yeah, and what I was getting at was I would recommend you do the 15-inch. It is what is stubbed out. It is size for this area. You wouldn't want to preclude yourself from handling any problem areas in the future just by, not spending the extra for the oversizing.
So if there was a question there about, can you do that if you don't have enough other subdivisions included? Will that be allowed by?
No, you can have, you ideally, going through this process, you have your sewer service area match your ultimate sewer service area. That is the ideal here, but it doesn't have to. I mean, you can have an area. I wouldn't recommend that. You could have, like, the ultimate sewer shed is the pink. We could say a sewer service area is smaller than the pink for now, but we can justify the size of the pipe by the bigger sewer service area.
Linda?
Yep, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, just a couple of things. I believe the original intent of this, it was recommended to the utility is because of obviously the issue with Richmond School. I mean, there's a lot of issues there that have to be taken care of. However, it was also brought up that we need a comprehensive plan for our area to be filed, so we know what our plan is for down the road. That has to be in place. And so then that's what we're trying to do. It was also to see how many area farmers, landowners were interested in pursuing developing their land, especially as values become so much higher now. There's a lot of money into selling their land and so forth. So it wasn't really intent on hooking anybody up and say, okay, let's take this subdivision, we're going to hook them up at this point. That was really never discussed in my viewpoint. It was more so, let's see who's interested in developing so we can grow Lisbon here. And I think I can speak as the only one in the room here that was forced to go on sewer in 1988 and 1990. I know how you people feel out there. You know, it was really hard to take. And my goal is not to force anybody, but if a subdivision overall has problems, then it's a different issue. But to force somebody, no, that is not, I don't believe our intent. I'll only speak for myself. Of the original 432 homes, 432 homes are now paying for the $850,000 improvements to the Sussex plant. That's not coming from Lisbon. That's coming from 432 homes. How would you people like to pay that? That's what we're paying for. $50 thereabouts that was assessed to homes in origin was not from the beginning. It was started at somewhere along the line at about $50 a year. Everybody in Lisbon paid for that because costs were so high and we were paying for this. So then at this point, then it was stopped when it became a village. But there again, I mean, I do have some questions. I'm concerned. Yeah, I wasn't involved in this in the beginning. I was out there where you are in the beginning. And there were a lot of things that weren't brought out that we have found out since I was on the original board years ago, like 900,000 gallons. It's ridiculous that we're only using 100,000. The question that I've always had that I can't seem to get an answer for, if Lisbon decides not to, if Sussex approaches us and says, hey, wait a minute, we're so expanding our area, which they are, these little bitty lots, they need more of our gallons and they want to buy it back. So okay, if we buy it and sell it back to them, or we go, no, we don't want to, we're going to hang on to ours. But they have to expand it to suit Sussex. Is Lisbon charged for that?
So you're saying if they expand the treatment plant,
To get more usage for Sussex, even though we have so much extra usage?
What capacity of Sussex are they at?
I don't know. But generally speaking, when regional plants look to expand and they've got outside entities that they serve, from a planning standpoint, you usually either there's a process from when you connect it into the system that governs how future capacity expansions are handled. In most cases, the regional plant is approaching the other entity to say, how much capacity, this is what we're doing, how much capacity do you need? And you'd say, well, we already have 9/10 of our capacity unutilized, so none. They would then move forward. Now, if they're doing something that is maintenance related, like they just did, they would then charge the parties in kind based on what they're doing. But capacity,
Based on what they're doing, so can you specify based on their used capacity or their owned capacity that they own? Based on the 100,000 or the 900,000?
I don't know, Matt. I don't know how
Okay.
your agreement is written. I mean, that's not really what I came here to talk about tonight.
Okay, no, you just, or does Dan, I mean, by
I have
staff?
to
probably-
check, but I'm pretty sure it's the 900,000, but I'd have to read through the
Yeah.
agreement and through the 2024 upgrade that took place.
But that would be on maintenance, which would make sense because we're all using the system. I think the question is if Sussex needs to increase the capacity of the regional plant because Sussex has overextended its use. would Lisbon get charged more
No.
if we don't?
Generally speaking, no, they would approach you, practically speaking, if I was Sussex, the first thing I would do is talk to you before expanding, because I know you're not using nearly the amount of capacity that you've paid for. So, the first course of action would be to try to buy capacity back. But secondly, it would be, what do you need? I mean, that's usually how this goes. We're expanding. Do you need any expansion? Do we need to build anything additional for you? If the answer is no, we will not.
I just want to clarify something because I saw a bunch of faces in the crowd. We are not forcing anything that happened back in, this is not a meeting to force anything. So
Well,
please don't, this is not the message for the audience.
yeah, I think one point of clarification is, the capacity that you purchased goes back to, I believe, the 1990s. Most of this capacity has been bought and paid for already.
Yes.
So I think the question, as you look at these sewer service areas, is how do you utilize that capacity? That's really, to me, the heart of the issue that you're needing to consider tonight, not how do we deal with capacity we already bought and paid for 20 some years ago. Well, in most cases, so in Sussex's case, they took out what's called a Clean Water Fund loan, which is a loan through the state of Wisconsin. It's a subsidized loan program for sanitary sewer projects, and you pay a portion of that loan. It's their loan. You have a contractual agreement to pay a portion of it.
Then, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Dan or Lisa, do you have any questions or you want to ask, or ask anything that should be clarified for everyone that's here?
I did. I think everyone circled through them all, so I think I'm good.
All right, let's try to get to some of the focus areas then. And maybe some less time on some than others, obviously, but I think, even if, I know your time is.
No, I want to be respectful
but I
of your
think-
time. I'm here as long as you want me to, but I just, we'll start with going back, to focus area 1, if that's the desire of the board and the plan commission.
So that, just so that everyone is aware that that is as it was brought up, that's the pressing area because of this main that we have on Richmond Road, correct?
Right. And
Not the main, the left.
so I'll, we touched upon some of this, but just to recap, focus area 1, the pink line is, because we did know the sewer data in 164. So we do know that roughly based on a basement depth of 11 feet, 12 feet, that can be served by gravity. The most cost-effective way to serve sewage is by gravity. So that green line would be an envisioned extension. It begins with a 15 and goes down to 12, then to 8 eventually. So that's how the area could be served. The land use plan is in the background with the various colors and cross hatching. So basically what we described in our memo was the things that we wanted the plan commission to consider to give us feedback on. Undeveloped areas, any undeveloped areas that you want higher density or envision a higher water user that would need sewer, that you'd like to encourage a land use that would require sewer, any undeveloped areas, right there you go. Any redevelopment areas, and then any of the existing development that is, that if there's any septic issues that you know of, doesn't sound like there's any. And then, it's kind of redundant, the last one is just any higher density areas that are desired for the focus area. So we did hear some of that. I did hear, I was not at that meeting, but Oren. So we did get some feedback that there were maybe some areas of the undeveloped land that was desirous of being served by sewer. So I don't know if you want to comment on that at all. I mean,
We just had a question to reiterate what's currently part of the approved sewer service area in this specific area versus what's?
It's the fire station here and the school.
So the map that
blue
you passed
shape.
out might included a couple other properties. It's only those two, correct?
Correct.
Nothing, like nothing over here. I think, are you, looking to pull that up?
It was this kind of purple area that was the question.
Like, this is not included.
Really, it's going back maybe to this map. Where we're looking at. So
Shows that as well.
the blue areas, right?
Yeah. Do you know the source? Mike, do you know the source of that? Do we have to check or?
Go, please.
Yes, speak. Speak up.
They were existing shape files that we had in our system. Sure of the exact same.
So existing GIS shape files that showed that that was in this existing sewer service area. Okay. So it was in your GIS system. It's nothing we created.
So again,
But we can check on that.
Those blue areas are being shown as part of the approved 208 boundary for that area.
Right.
How that appears on here.
Okay, so this,
So that just the feedback that we want, and we don't have to get it all tonight. I mean, we can receive it over time too, but, any areas that you envision that a sewer use, higher density or commercial, any other areas surrounding the station or the school that you see or not?
well, and I think, and I'll let Linda jump in. I mean, I think this needs to have a decent discussion on this, and I can tell people are getting antsy.
Sure.
After 4 hours, but so what's the consensus as far as diving into this more or moving on? Is there a consensus? Doing this at another time. I mean, we're all here. Are we fine to keep on going?
My mom says I can stay tonight.
Yeah.
In the East Coast, it's.
All right, so we want to keep on asking, I mean, what's
Sure.
go ahead,
Well, I thought there was some area, Orin, wasn't there some feedback, on the north side of K that?
Yeah, some of the
Potential.
takeaways from our last meeting was that on consensus, the plan commission was amenable to development occurring along the north side of K
Mhm.
and being potentially served by sewer.
Okay,
And those represent two different property owners, but the consensus was that maybe a portion of the Pew Farm had a potential to be developed as a high water user scenario playing if it was developed to be something similar to the industrial on the other side of the municipal line in Sussex.
okay,
And that a residential development with a density that was more intense than a 40,000 square foot lot could be that would be something that could be tolerated in this area. I think there was a general consensus from the plan commission on that.
Well,
I
let's,
think that was discussed. I don't think there was consensus. I
Right.
just want to be clear.
all right, so we're gonna go around the table.
We didn't vote. When I say,
Around the table on that in a second.
when I
Linda,
say
you had-
consensus, I mean heads nodding and like I said, a general consensus. You're right, Kurt, we didn't vote. There
And
was
just
no voting and there won't be any
reduce
voting
that one
tonight.
area.
Linda has a question here, and then can you pull up the aerial for the Pew Farm?
Yeah,
Just a quick question. I've always kind of wondered. I know when we hooked up Lisbon School, Richmond School, it came east down and K to get down to Richmond Road, get down to Sussex. And when this was first started, that the state told us that if sewer goes by your house, you have 1 year to hook up.
That's
Why
not true.
weren't those people on, not that I want them to, but why weren't those people on Richmond Road required to hook up?
because it's a force main. It's not a gravity sewer.
Okay,
So if you,
it's what? Well, that's what I wanted to ask too. I think the law changed, but it used to be 1 year you had to hook up.
if we put a gravity sewer from Richmond School down to Quick Trip, are existing houses on that gravity, main gonna be forced to hook up?
Well,
I think that happened in the early 2000s that the law
the state
changed.
plumbing code changed on that?
I believe
That they have to or they don't have to.
that
Well-
it's up to the communities to establish. that.
And we need that answer, I mean, we need that definite answer
Yeah.
on that. I mean.
Yeah,
You have to look at Lisbon's existing ordinance.
No, I
okay?
mean, I think state law is what's more, I mean,
No.
Lisbon's not
well,
going
you could
to
be more
require
restrictive.
that.
It could be
It's-
restrictive. That could, and that could be in your ordinance. Yeah, because that's good policy, actually. From the standpoint of what we were talking about before, my opinion, it's good policy because you're putting an asset in and you want to recover the cost of that as soon as possible. And they are benefited by the property. So. But generally though, if it's a force main, you can't just connect into it easily anyway.
With a new subdivision in Sussex, I believe hooked up to it. Didn't they hook up to our sewer line coming down?
That's their sewer line. You're talking about Redford Hills?
Yes, yes.
Redford Hills is sewered and that is their pipe from that point.
Right.
That's the end of our pipe.
Right,
That's it, okay?
correct. They're hooked into our pipe. Yeah.
Right, so Tom, the parcel that we're talking about, so let's look at these three here. So we have the eastern portion of the Pew Farm, the western portion of the Pew Farm, and this 30-some acres there. Again, those would be the ones that increased density, if anywhere on vacant land would, I mean, if we're not willing to do something there, we're not willing to do something anywhere. I mean, so it was suggested at the last meeting that something along those lines be done on that land. Really, this up highway is gonna be extended to 4-lane divided highway in the next 10 years. With a median.
Okay.
So let's go around the room. I mean, again, I think we kind of have an idea, but I mean, you mentioned before, there'd be more, or you said there'd be more intense water use for industrial here than there would be for single family?
Just as a land use, there's a potential depending on the user. If it ends up being a warehouse, then no.
Sure, right,
Yeah,
With
but
most of
if
the-
it's a manufacturing type use, then maybe.
sure.
But if there was any lot in the area where we thought there could be a potential for a high water user, it was that one. Was what I took away from the conversation. Not saying that it's going to happen, but the potentiality.
Again, we're gathering all this input and then.
Yep.
We'll summarize it.
Okay, all right, so these three chunks here, let's give them some feedback here. Do we want to start on this side or, Jen, you want to start again? What are your thoughts?
I would agree with that. I personally think you should have all of that area in the pink should be part of the sewer service. But the density, I think, would be a fine thing to have there.
So increased density here on these three parcels, with what do you, can you, like a 20,000 square foot lots would,
But it's fine with me. I know that there's gonna be a lot of pushback on that.
Mhm.
But I think,
Trying to look for
I
that
think
one.
because of the density you're matching up with Sussex, that this would be the
Right,
place
and
to start increasing.
Especially if it's
that.
gonna be a 4-lane road there.
Correct. And then, as you go further out, maybe
Yeah.
not do that same density.
I think if we can get a consensus here on that, I don't know that we'll get the consensus other places, but again, if we don't get it here, that's not going anywhere. All right, Kurtz, what are your thoughts on these three roughly 40-acre parcels?
Favor of high density lots.
Sean?
Okay, and I will kind of throw it back. Has there been any talk or anything that is going in there that there have been prospective individuals looking at that area?
Yes.
Oh, there are. Oh.
Yeah, so we've had a meeting with the heirs of the Pew Farm estate regarding their potential interests in doing a CSM to divide the property equally amongst the heirs of the estate. We've also had a meeting with a potential developer to, just conceptually talking about doing single family on that whole parcel and what the lot yield could be. And that particular developer is interested if there's going to be sewer because they would want to do greater density then.
And keep in mind, high density it's different from people to people. If you look at a county's high density,
We're talking about our low density in the land use plan, which.
Talking about 20,000 square foot lots, not 8,000 square foot lots.
right, so it's 20,000 is still low density in the county's perspective on things.
20 to 40,000 square foot lots.
It's high density for Lisbon, but low density for, yeah. Right, so,
So that's half acre lots you're talking about.
Yeah.
yeah, so Sherry, on these 3 parcels, are you okay with increased density there?
I'm opposed to high density. In those 3 parcels, I could see a little bit higher density, but not high density.
Like, I guess 20,000 square feet is kind of,
What's an acre?
It's about a half
100
acre.
So you're okay, so you'd be looking at, you're talking,
half an acre.
but if you're talking half acre
Right.
total density, you're probably talking 1/3 acre lots.
I guess I was talking 20,000 square foot minimum lot sizes, but to your point, that means a density of, right, a
That's
density of less than 2 lots per acre.
Yeah, so if you're talking minimum size of 20,000 acre lots, so it makes it a little bit higher density.
Right, yep.
Higher,
Uh,
lower,
not-
whatever.
Yes.
But yes. I guess I prefer 30,000, but I would not agree to higher density in the area on the pink west of K that we aren't talking about yet.
Said page there. All right, Joe?
If you only put it on the north side of K, you're not gonna have enough units in order to justify the cost of that sewer.
So to answer the question on would you support it here?
Yes, in that area, but you can't just do the north side of the road.
Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I'm okay with a higher density there.
Mark?
Yeah. I thought you were doing planning commission.
Oh, so just going on, Rob?
I don't know about half, but I could be not solid on it yet.
All right, I'm fine with that there. Linda?
Are you saying that we would agree to like, they have to be at least half acre?
Yeah, 20,000 square foot.
Right, right.
And we're not locked in or anything. This is a,
Just
you
a-
know,
Yeah, just, the
Oh.
only thing I would say, if it's in the pink area, that we're talking about here, or any area, if it's in the Seward area, I think those lots should be Seward. Just because I think that should be a rule in the area. That's what I would.
If you sewer
Yes,
lots,
For new
you're,
development.
for vacant land development.
Yes, for vacant land development. Yep, they should be sewer, because I know developers don't, because the smaller the lots they get, the more money they make. I understand that. But when they're bigger lots, they kind of back off and go, wait a minute, we're not gonna make as much money.
Is the cost.
Yeah, yeah, but I would say they have to be sewered. The new development.
Right,
but
so-
then you're pretty much guaranteeing that we have to change our comprehensive development plan to make smaller lots there.
But
Is
it's
that a
no,
bad thing?
I don't want smaller
Then
lots.
you're, look at Sussex.
I don't,
But we're talking about a compromise between the density of what Sussex has now and what the acre lots.
Yeah,
We're
I
trying to
don't
look
want
for that
small lots.
compromise
We're gonna only-
and still
Yeah,
serve
yeah.
the
But the
community.
developers want
So
1/3
what
acre or
you're-
less on
So
sewer
part of what
lots.
you guys do is you go and do whatever the developer wants. You can
No, we
dictate
don't.
to the developer on what you want. You can say, just what Linda's saying, you can say, developer, if you're
Yeah.
gonna be here, you have to develop it on sewer.
exactly.
And that's exactly why Hillside Ridge is not sewered, is because they did not want to develop it on sewer based on what
But you
we
should
wanted
make
for
them
lot
put it
size.
on sewer.
Should have done, yeah.
We didn't have a main in front of them to, force the issue. If we had the main in front, then
That far.
Accountable. It's not, it wouldn't have been. The developer's never gonna wanna spend money to do any of it.
Yes. You're
unless
right.
they get an increased density.
Correct.
Right, that's, so, okay, so on these 3 parcels though, it's 2 parcels. 3 different areas. I mean, I think I heard there's an appetite potentially for higher density from 5 of us, 2 of us, definitely not, and then 3 kind of maybes. Is there any other parcels that you wanted to kind of explore here? Because I think that's where maybe we lose potential support, but
I wanted to mention that we have someone interested in a concept review for developing this parcel, which
parcel, dear?
eventually will show up as highlighted on there. So this is the parcel that,
We got the application today for conceptual review.
Really?
yeah.
help us out. I can't read that.
We can't read that.
So it,
west of.
yeah, fronts on Lindale. It also has a dead end, a road that stubs into it from the adjacent subdivision to the west and north.
What's the name of that street?
Let's zoom in. Here, let me switch
Sure.
over to the county's GIS.
Yeah.
We got Jessica Drive and Carleen Drive.
That's right off of Carl Schultz's.
Carleen,
Yeah.
where Carleen Drive dead ends, so that's the north end of the parcel.
So is that this?
Kind of, it's through the something else in between there, but yes.
Let's see.
Because that's not,
Arrowhead Meadows,
but that's right next to Arrowhead Highlands.
which is next to Arrowhead Highlands, yep. So,
It comes around.
But we're not probably getting sewer there anyways, based on
when we,
topography and.
yeah, when we go back to our map and what gravity could feed in the area, hold on, let me pan over. The north end is the only portion that could be served via gravity. So this small portion on the north end, based on the topography and the rough analysis of what could be served by gravity, that northern portion. But I bring it up because somebody's contemplating development there. And it's next to another vacant property that's also developable, that also has some area that could potentially be served by gravity.
Does it ever make sense to have a subdivision half and half? Like the top half of this is in the area they can do it and the bottom half isn't. Would you just say septic systems, or would you say the top part gets sewer because it can?
You could pump the southern portion into the north.
That's the lift station idea. I mean,
Lift station,
right.
yeah.
They're very, I mean, they are common, but again, does it make financial sense? I guess is the more.
Or you could send it to a different, can you send it to a different plant? Based off the topography? Because, for instance,
There goes to Brookfield.
this is,
Does.
this
Oh,
goes
does
to
it?
Milwaukee.
Yes.
And they're looking at doing something there.
Goes down
This
to
parcel here is
Milwaukee
up for
and goes
development.
Brookfield.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, goes back to sewer service areas,
Right.
Area was probably,
But
Probably
that's
not
something, that's
vision.
something to look at is this parcel
only
is
where
getting
I'm-
developed in a different community.
yeah.
This middle area here is not gonna be developable. I mean, this middle part here was not developed. This is all wet. I mean,
There's,
What?
part of their
area,
concept
but-
plan shows where wetlands are. They've had a delineation done. So again, that'll all be coming before you in the future anyways, so we don't have to spend too much time on it, but I just wanted to point out if there was another area to discuss that, there's a development proposal for that'll be coming as a concept plan to the Plan Commission in the near future.
what, Dan, in this area, you kind of talked about if there's not an appetite for the board or commission to go to 20,000 square foot lots elsewhere, but if we wanted to do maybe,
Conservancy?
Yeah, conservancy developments, that could be appealing and kind of satisfy everyone's.
Well, I guess that's my question, maybe to Tom and to other folks that have experience, is would it make more sense to develop, let's say, the area with that like weird aviation building in the middle of a field? It's like 80 acres. Would it make more sense to, instead of having 70 1-acre lots, to have 70 20,000 square foot lots, have less road and less frontage, so it's less maintenance for our highway guys to plow, less sewer mains going in, and potentially a better looking subdivision, and then having more conservancy? Is that more of a cost effective way to still get sewer in areas without breaking the bank for the people that are moving there?
Yeah, I mean, each geography is, special, it's different, right? But in general, to cluster is what we're talking about. cluster development, yeah, and then you still need the density, but, as long as your open space isn't too high,
So yes and no.
Yes and no. Sorry, it's hard to answer
all right.
that. I mean,
Well, I mean, the point of clustering is so that you get more density,
Yeah.
but there also the point is that you have more open space so that the subdivision doesn't look like a square box with roads cutting in and out.
right, and
Right, I think
lawn
the
farms and.
goal there would be to have the clustered development so that you didn't have to, closer to where the pipe is gonna be, so
Right.
that you don't have to extend as much pipe.
Right. So maybe
So
the
if it could-
backside of that
If-
property
If
is
it could work with the lay of the land and where the open space that you'd want to preserve is located, then it would maybe make sense.
Yeah, like in that case, if you said, well, cluster them all on the south end, well, then you gotta, so the sewer in front of the lots is not a lot. But
right.
then you gotta pump it all the way back up to a main line up in K, so.
Right. But then we'll port connections all where for the.
Yeah, true.
I guess the one thing we did not answer, and then Mark's gonna have something, but on the, going back to that 77 acre Pew Farm, I mean, we talk about density, but industrial versus residential. I mean, can we, if there's an indifference between I mean, can we leave the land use plan, have enough flexibility for the developer to decide, or do we need to make that decision when you're drafting your land use plan?
As part of the comp plan update, we would want to address it. There's definitely a difference between a land use that could potentially be industrial and a subdivision, because it impacts the adjacent landowners, and it creates a development pattern where, you may want to buffer from it depending on which way it goes. And so, and that goes both ways. If you develop, as an example, the Pew Farm, the east end of that as residential, you'll want to buffer it from the next door industrial use. If you develop it as industrial, then you want to buffer the next property to the west from it with, if that's going to be something other than industrial or commercial.
And there's a tree line there now, but that's about it, right? I mean, and then I guess the topography changes as well.
Yeah, there's actually existing natural buffer to the north, because of the existing natural resources out there in the topography.
So the eastern portion of that property, industrial versus residential, I guess is the question that Warren has, or that we should have.
Yeah, so you want consistency between your land use plan and your zoning. Whatever gets prescribed in the land use plan, if somebody wants to develop it, they would have to propose to rezone to something that's consistent with that land use type. So part of what I tried to clarify at the last meeting is that what we have prescribed in the current land use plan did not contemplate sewer in this area. So one of the questions to the Plan Commission was, is there an appetite to change the prescribed land uses? Which we will have that conversation regardless of if we're talking about sewer, because that's part of a comprehensive plan update anyways. But that's a factor that wasn't there when the last, plan update was looked at, which was around the time of the incorporation. So, Linda, you raised the question of, do we have a comprehensive plan earlier? We do. You're required to have one by law. And, do you have to update it now? We don't. You're required to update it every 10 years by law. You've done an update within, the last several years. It was probably 2022, I think maybe, that the last update was done. So you're covered for a while, but the rationale for doing one now is that you're no longer a town.
Right.
Your comp plan is the county's comp plan, essentially, with some minor changes based on the incorporation. You don't have a comp plan that's just for Lisbon, especially not as a village. So the goal was to have a new comp plan that acknowledged the incorporation and just talked about Lisbon without the weight of all of the stuff that's in the county's one. You can just talk about now.
All right, so. Mark,
Also keep in mind that residential is not revenue positive. Industrial, commercial is. In other words, you build a subdivision, it costs more for the municipality, in this case Lisbon, to service that facility more than what you get from tax revenue. You need $900,000+ houses in order to be positive revenue. Well,
Right, so I think so Joe's, if I'm hearing him right, and I'm gonna agree with him, that I think this this side makes more sense to me for industrial.
Well, you
And so
gotta-
Sherry is on the same page. Do we have any other hands up on that, taking an informal poll? Do we have a? All right, so,
And this is industrial.
yes, yes,
The industrial next to the industrial.
exactly. So, Sean, what do you agree? Kurt, Jane, Brian, and Mark, you agree?
For industrial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Linda, so look, that's unanimous there then. And that's the first time we've had unanimous in a while.
So if I understood that statement from Joe, we get more money from industrial?
God, yes.
Well,
Okay.
I think he's talking like with the schools and everything
Yeah,
else, because I
right.
mean, there's no kids going to school at the industrial building.
Right,
I mean,
right.
If you've got 60-foot lots,
Right.
you've got a lot more, you don't have enough money coming in. Vista Run is not positive for the village of Sussex.
Mhm.
It's not, because if you talk about all the stuff that's in there, you got school, fire, police, snow plowing, you've got all the rest of the stuff.
Right, you're right.
It's over $1 million that you have to have on one lot in order for positive revenue to come to the municipality.
I think Mark had another parcel or two he wanted to talk about. Or did I hear you wrong? No.
Oh, well, actually, one thing I wanted to point out is, I think, and it's the consensus of the past few planning commissions is, I think we're so stuck on this 1 acre idea that we lose sight that Lisbon isn't just all 1 acres. Mountain Shadows, for example, a lot of the houses in Mountain Shadows are less than 3/4 of an acre. You look at the subdivision Barnwood Conservancy.
Yeah, that's a PUD
Well,
development.
we were creative back in 2017, I think it was, and we thought outside the box and did a PUD development there. I mean, Barnwood's one of the nicest subdivisions aesthetically that we have.
Oh, yeah.
And those are 3/4 acre, 0.7s, but
And that's a new subdivision to the
Yeah.
point, but Mountain Shadows, I mean,
So-
is 2/3 of an acre lots, a lot of them are over there,
Yeah.
Mountain Shadows.
so like, you go down Walnut Road, there's a 0.3 acre parcel on Walnut Road.
But those
Like-
3/4 acre lots are 1 acre density when you take into the overall, when you.
I'm not talking.
And that's
overall
what, when
density, I'm
Lisbon
just-
says
I'm just
about
talking
1 acre
every- I think
density, that's
people-
what
people
could be a
get-
smaller lot, it's just the overall density is 1 acre.
So I think that's an important point. I mean, but I think when we say 1 acre lots, I mean, we mean 1 acre lots. We don't mean 1 acre density because they are different things. I mean, so, right.
Density is
And
not
I
a 1
think,
acre.
I think that's when we're
Right.
asking these questions, I think we need to clarify that because it's kind of misleading with how some people are answering. Is our overall density perspective 1 acre, or is it actually 1 acre? Because a lot of our subdivided lots, we don't have 1 acres.
No, they're 1 acre density.
Yeah.
So those lots are a little bit less than one. I mean, they're not half acre and they're not 3/4. They're somewhere in between 3/4 and 1 acre.
Well, no, I think like Mountain Shadows, there are a decent number of lots in there that are 2/3 of an acre.
That was developed
Yes.
long before the
That was the
current
70s.
current codes
yeah.
were in place.
We've gotten by.
Probably didn't even have codes back then.
We've made it.
So
So
I think a lot of these subdivisions, like over by, I mean, even, Arrowhead Highlands and these others are the 1 acre density, but they are
Just a little less than
three,
1 acre.
they might be closer to 3/4, a lot of, I mean.
That's why I'm saying they're probably between 3/4, 1 acre, but not half acre, 1/4 acre, or 1/10 of an acre like Sussex.
That was part of what I tried to convey at the last meeting was when it was just the plan commission was that if there's areas in this focus area or other focus areas that have a suburban density as the prescribed, land use in the comp plan. If somebody wanted to do 40,000 square foot lots, they would have to amend the comp plan to low density. to do a 40,000 square foot lot, because the suburban density prescribes a larger lot size than that as the minimum. And so part of the conversation was, would the plan commission be amenable to changing the land use for certain areas within some of these focus areas that we're going to talk about to something more dense, like the low density, which prescribes a range of, 20,000 up to 1.4. So you would need to do that anyways to get the 40,000 square foot lots, but it would also provide the potentiality of doing a more intense development. It doesn't mean you have to allow the more intense development. You still get an opportunity several points throughout the process to look at the zoning, and then a
We have to allow something in that range, but
once-
we can insist on the high end of the range.
right.
I mean,
Once you have the zoning, then there's some rights. They can propose a development that meets that density. But the land use alone doesn't create the development. It just creates the opportunity for a development that ranges in that density.
Well, and I think, and unless it's changed, our code did designate if it was a sewer development and it was in whatever zoning, if it was sewered, it could have smaller, up to down, I can't remember what the.
Yep. Yeah, the zoning says you can
Smaller,
have
smaller.
a 30
lots that-
30,000
without
square foot
changing
lot.
20.
Yep.
30,000. So there you have your flexibility
So if
in
you-
that range.
So like if you had, an R1 or R2, I think it's 30,000
Mhm.
sewered.
So then, but we could allow it on those two chunks there, we could go down smaller than that. I mean.
Yeah, but it would,
Under a different zoning code.
but it would,
section.
it would need the low density land use. So some of these areas already have the low density land use, and some of them have suburban, or maybe something even, more than that, suburban 2 potentially. So, the area that we were looking at for our rezoning this evening had a prescription of the less dense, if you will, where the minimum lot size has to be 3 acres.
Mhm.
That's a different tier of density than the low density, which is the 20,000 square foot lot to 1.4. So we've got a range in the comp plan as far as where these things are prescribed. And my biggest takeaway for you all was, we weren't talking about sanitary sewer areas at the time that update was done, and you weren't a village at the time that update was done, when we were looking at those land uses. So whenever things like this happen in a municipality's lifespan, that's when you go back and look at the comp plan and say, okay, the assumptions have changed. Do we want to make changes to the prescribed land uses and to other policies? So that's why we're doing that effort, and it piggybacks this, because sewer pack requires the information for a sewer service area to be based on those land uses that come from your comprehensive plan. Partially, right, Tom?
I think you got enough feedback from us tonight on on allowing that 20,000 to 1.4 acre lots in these areas, with recognizing the board is not gonna necessarily allow for something at a density less than one lot per acre outside of those kind of 3 areas that we talked about, but that gives us the flexibility to allow that if it was desired in the future.
Yeah, and I would just extend that to, would you be amenable to other areas being the low density with that same assumption in mind?
Low density, you mean like?
As a land use, so meaning,
But higher density is what you mean?
well,
Low density
the actual category is called low density, and it allows 20,000 on the low end up to 1.4. And that includes what we've seen recently, which is 40,000 square feet. So every subdivision that we've looked at recently that has 40,000 square foot lots has a low density land use category. Some of them have had to do amendments to get to that, and some of them already had that. There's areas within, the pink boundary here within focus area 1 that have a suburban density 1 or a suburban density 2, which requires a larger minimum lot size. would the plan commission be comfortable having other areas within this also be low density as opposed to a suburban density? Meaning, would you be comfortable with lots that are 20,000 square feet to 1.4 acres as a potentiality instead of, 2 and up?
So there's no, if, again, and I agree with Sherry's point about we're not committing to 20,000 square foot lots. But if we commit to that classification, all we're saying is that it can be anywhere from that 20,000 to 1.4 acres.
Somebody would still
And
need it for the
board
40,000.
Still needs
Yeah.
to approve what that
But if-
minimum lot size is.
If we have that categorized between 20,000 and 1.4 acre and a developer comes in and says, I want to do all 20,000 lots, that's what our code says he can do.
No, we have to grant, what I understand is we have to grant something in that range. We couldn't insist on a 1.5 acre lot or density, but we could insist on the high end of that range. Is that correct?
And they'd have to apply for a rezone too.
They'd have to apply for a rezone and the zoning would,
So we're not changing the zoning, we're just changing the category. Is
we're
that
talking about the land use category, yep.
okay?
So
Can we insist
But
on?
our land use categories are tied to density. Not every community has that. And so that is kind of the norm for Waukesha County. And I think it's a good idea to talk about density in your comp plan because it engages these types of conversations.
Let's finish this off so there's not any gray area. So if the developer proposes 20,000 square foot lots, we can still say no, but but as long as we stick within that range, right?
They could propose a zoning that was within that range and you could say yes or no to the rezoning. So if they, if let's say it has the low density, that's just going off of what we just did for Newman for Alpine Hills. That was the most recent example. It had the low density. They proposed to rezone to R2 and they're proposing to develop that subdivision at the R2 zoning. And it's still with, they're meeting the density requirements of the low density category from the comp plan. With that
I think
R2 zoning.
There's a disconnect here. So again, if they come in and ask for 20,000 square foot lots, but we want 40,000 square foot lots, we're still within our right to insist on that 40,000 square foot minimum lots. If we go with this different land use plan, is that correct? Because if not, you're not going to see a positive vote on it.
The district, if the district that they're proposing to rezone to is consistent with that land use, then they could potentially do it.
I mean, all 20,000 square foot lots? they could-
But the zoning district would have to allow 20,000 square foot lots
Oh.
that they're proposing.
Yeah, but that district is 20 to 1.4 acres.
This is the land use, yeah. The land use category is that.
If the land use plan has that range and they propose something for 20,000 square feet, we say no, but we'll allow something else in that land use plan category, which is at the higher end of the range. Is that within our rights?
I thought that was, you were able to in the rezone because that's more of a quasi judicial part of it, determine that you don't want this development at 20,000, but you do your negotiation for something bigger.
Yeah.
Before the rezone is approved, that would be your time to do it. The land use is still the land use, the zoning is still A10 until they come forward with that rezone. That's where you have your flexibility.
I like Elisa's, you're comfortable, but I'm not hearing everyone else that's comfortable with and confident with that. And that gets me concerned. Cause I'm like, sorry, I don't want to be boxed in on this.
I'm not comfortable with 20,000 lot.
Right,
20,000
and other than these
20,000 square foot lot.
places we talked about, I'm
Even if
not
we-
either.
Even if it says, well, we have to, I've been the last time I was on the plan commission years ago and had developers coming and say, well, this is what your code says, this is what you gotta do.
Problem is that the next step then is 1.4 to something else. So there's no in between. So there's a flexibility between that 20,000 and 1.4. So, I mean, you can check with Eric if you'd like, but there is flexibility in the rezone based on how that takes place. It's a public hearing. They take input from residents. You have the ability to make changes or make recommendations. We do it all the time.
I just want to clarify, we're not changing the comprehensive development Well, you're talking land use and comprehensive development
Same
plan are
thing.
one and the same.
Comprehensive land use plan
Right.
Right, which is.
has the
That's
land
future-
use.
That's what you're thinking, future
category.
land use you want.
Right, and
And
that
that's talking-
density, what Orin is talking about, the low density is 20,000 to 1.4.
So
But if someone proposes a rezone, the zoning district dictates the minimum lot size.
Right.
that's what I'm saying. So we
still have
have
to meet
a
the
zoning
density.
map, which has this, say, zoned as R3, R1, whatever. And they want to put really small, they want to put 20,000 lots. They have,
They
the
can't,
zoning,
because our zoning districts don't allow a lot size
I'm
that's
saying the
small.
zoning districts trump anything else.
Right.
Okay.
So if they say, I want, R2, I think is R3 is the smallest lot size that we have. What size? Yeah, 30,000 Seward. They could propose that. And we say, no, we want a larger lot size zoning district approved for this. If you're going to rezone it, you just deny the rezoning. Yes.
So that's, can you?
And that's why I was trying to differentiate between the two, because they're two different things, but one dictates the other.
So the far end of the spectrum is what's considered rural, which is 5 acre plus lot sizes.
No, but I think, so does that? If what Lisa's saying is correct, which that's my understanding has been for the last 15 years, then I'm comfortable with that because we're not required to go with that 20,000 square.
Have to
foot.
approve a rezone request.
I'm comfortable with that now, but 5, 10 years down the road, you have a different plan commission.
Right.
And they look at it and going, we need to make our zoning match our land use plan.
But Sherry, things change though. I mean, the
Right.
perceptions of communities change.
I understand
mean,
that, but
they've
I'm
been
thinking of-
changing all over the county. So in 5 or 10 years, 20,000 square foot lots may be well over the norm of what a normal sized lot is. And remember that, we're speaking for people that currently live in Lisbon. You're not speaking for people that want to move to Lisbon.
Right, but people
And-
generally move to Lisbon because they want the larger.
But that's not necessarily true. That's your perception of it. So I'd love to move to Lisbon. I don't want to live on an acre lot. I want to live on a half acre lot, but there's not really any available right now. So, I mean, everyone has different opinions, and that's not to say that you guys don't want me to move to Lisbon. It's just, I don't see any development that fits how I live. And I think you have to open up to, I'm not saying you have to develop quarter acre lots everywhere, but open up to the fact that there are people that want to move in Lisbon that you're disenfranchising by saying 3/4 to 1 acre lots to 1.5 acre lots. It's easy to say that when you live in Lisbon, but when you are looking at the outside and looking into Lisbon, just consider how the market is, not necessarily how Newman says the market is, but how in general, people are getting to not want to take care of 1 acre lots. I live in a 1.3 acre lot. I'm sick of mowing it. I gotta mow it, every week and it takes an hour and a half and I cut my arms and my legs on all the stupid trees. I'd love to have a 20,000 acre lot where it's nice little box. I get to see my neighbors and walk my dogs down the street. I don't have that right now. A lot of people want to see that. So just keep in mind when you're discussing these things and what Lisbon is and what we want, you have to think outside of who lives here now and who will be here later. And that's my speech.
And we don't have to decide tonight. We don't have to decide tonight. So I just want the point to be clear about the different densities that are in the land use plan currently, the different densities that exist in our focus area 1. Same conversations are gonna have to happen for the other focus areas, and they might be around other land uses other than residential. Because other focus areas, when we talk about focus area 3, you've got 164 going through it. That has commercial and industrial that other areas of the village don't have. So these types of conversations are gonna take place as we tick around the clock on the different focus areas. But we our group here, the Plan Commission and this committee are tasked to look at future development, potential of future development, and future land uses and how they play into the village's long-range plans and the financial future for the village. So timing wise, it's great that we're having all these conversations at the same time. And when we look at the different focus areas, we'll have the land use layers there so that that can be a part of the conversation. It doesn't have to be the only part of the conversation, but it should be part of it.
Jane?
I also want to say that part of our responsibility being on these boards is to look at those existing subdivisions. Despite what you're going to hear from every property owner, there is a lifespan to your septic systems and your mound systems. And whether it's 30 years or 50 years, the efforts we're going through right now, you really have to recognize that that is something that needs to happen ultimately. And we touched on the whole environmental factor. They're finding more and more contaminants in private well water that's coming from your own septic systems. People don't test their wells, so they don't know what all those contaminants are. But for you to not even recognize those existing subdivisions that are all aging, you have to keep that in the grand scheme of what we're trying to do. And it's truly just a planning effort. At least what we're doing right now, it's to plan for the future, for everyone's future, not just new development.
100 years down the road type future, not
Yes.
like 30, not like
20.
when I'm, yeah.
Yes, my parents have probably spent more on fixing their sewer in Sussex than I've ever spent on my
And that could be,
septic.
but not everybody, so that's what everybody's, my septic system is fine.
No.
But what about the guy who's kind of hiding the fact?
I know,
that
but
it's
everybody
leak-
says sewer in and you never have any problems. Yeah, I can't tell you how many repairs and it was their expense because
Well, the
between the
lateral
road and the
probably
house.
had roots in
And there was
their
a problem
lateral.
when they put it in.
But anyway, that's still part of this whole big picture besides just the new development that you have to keep in mind too.
So Tom we have this sewer, the focus area 1 with the the pink boundary for the sewer service area. Again, we're not talking about making people hook up. We're not talking about putting mains in the ground. We're just talking about the sewer service area for that entire area. Is there opposition to this as it lays, or are we comfortable with going with this, knowing that there's no requirements to do anything by just having this be the area?
My opinion is you go to every border you have and make this land use plan out to the extremes of your borders.
Which is this, right?
This is a gravity service.
Right, so that's
But there's other ways to serve properties with sewer. To me, you identify them all now and then you're done.
Me too. Thank you.
but there's obviously a lot larger costs associated with lift stations and everything else. I mean, and that's why this was proposed as a gravity. Okay, so
I'm saying this planning thing that we're doing for sewer pack, you can add the entire community in there without any cost ramifications, correct?
Correct.
we talked about this at a previous meeting, and I think I threw out there, let's just have it be the whole, all of Lisbon, just for simplicity, and I was told that wasn't really an option.
I'm sure there's more.
I mean, there's gotta be some form of facility planning and capacity and that sort of thing where, we'd have to narrow down a little bit, I would expect. We couldn't just say the whole village wants to be in the sewer service area.
Yeah, I mean, that process that we described before with sewer pack. Now, if we would do that, let's just follow through with that. If we include the whole village, there would be timeframes associated with that. There would be, as part of your planning process, there'd be horizons that you'd look at that development and say, because if you came, for example, if we said we want the whole village and by the way, it's going to be all sewer and flow going to Sussex in 10 years, they'd say, well, time out here,
They won't let you
Well,
do
then, what
that.
I'm saying is,
But-
what if you said it would all go in 50 years?
Well, right now,
Would there
there-
be opposition to that?
there's a provision in NR 110 that says you can only do a 20-year horizon unless you can get an exception for a 40-year horizon. And I know where that whole thing came from. It's involved with it. But you can't, unless you're gonna say that we're gonna develop this whole thing, well, no, they're not gonna let you do
Yeah.
that. Because they're gonna say, fine, if you wanna develop 30 square miles within 20 years, where else are you not going to do it within the region?
True, yeah.
They're
so
not
that-
gonna allow you to grow that much, because if Lisbon takes that much more, then somebody else is going to undo it.
Yeah, that's true. So, looking at the whole regional water quality management plan, that would be part of that too. So yeah, you can, facility planning is 20 or 40 years. So the furthest you go is 40 years, but I think they want to see that it's within a reasonable
Yeah.
amount of, yeah, so.
Another
I
thing
just
to
got the
fact,
reason why you wouldn't want to do that.
another thing to factor in from a land use standpoint are the areas that aren't going to be developed in Lisbon, which would be the areas that are natural resources currently. There's a lot of environmental corridor in Lisbon. One of the other things that makes it an attractive place. And then there's the quarry areas. So a lot of those quarries have a lifespan that would go beyond that 20-year time frame. They're going to be still quarrying then. Some of them are at the end of their lifespan and are looking at, reclamation and restoration projects. That's the interest from the quarry in Area 3 that we're going to eventually get to talking about. So there are large swaths of area that won't be developed within that time frame for other reasons, like I mentioned. And the areas that are potentially going to develop, there's only so much undeveloped land left in Lisbon.
Isn't that much?
There's been a lot of development within the last 10 years. And so, we just had a tally of things that have been developed recently. Between Alpine Hills, 25 lots that we were talking about tonight, Homestead Ridge at full build out, 49 lots, Lake 5 Farms at 49 lots, October Fields at 40 lots. That's 163 lots, and that's just within the last few years. So there's a lot of rooftops going in. And all of those were at that low density. So
I have a question from the utility to the planning commission. Have we considered allowing like conservation subdivisions in Lisbon?
Yeah, we have them.
they exist, yeah.
Cool.
One up on,
Ironwood.
Hickory Road is a conservation subdivision.
So have we considered allowing communal systems like focused in those subdivisions? I know some people don't like that, but
What do you mean by a community?
like, I know up in Richfield, they have a subdivision along I-43, south of 167, 145. They developed the subdivision and there's like 40 lots that share one septic.
That's a full employment act, and I think I'll go back to work.
Okay. I mean, I'm
Yeah, they look good on paper, they don't make sense at all, because all you're doing is, all of a sudden, it's like, I like to, they're like HOAs, they sound really good on day one. In 10 years, when nobody wants to run the damn thing, all of a sudden, somebody's left with the thing, and who's gonna take it over?
I'll backtrack to the conservation. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of wetland and a lot of natural features. I mean, Dan makes a good point is, sure, he'd love to move to Lisbon, but he wants low density. Maybe he's on a quarter acre, but there's huge green spaces and huge natural features.
Well, that's what up on 164, where they're building that house,
House.
that one, that Bond's
Beautiful.
lot that finally sold, with that Hickory Road in 164. That's a conservation. So it's got smaller acres up on the hill, and then the whole bottom part down by the Bark River is all green space.
Yes. Right there.
And that developer fought hook and nail not to do that.
All right, so I think Linda and I are both fine with that sewer service area that's in the pink with the gravity fed system. It's gonna just go down the line. Rob, are you fine with that? You want it larger, smaller?
Wasn't this all that works with gravity?
It
or
all
just
works with
this?
gravity, but you want it to be,
I'm good with just the gravity.
you want it to be, okay, so you don't want it to be less. Mark, are you fine with that area in theory?
Of what the pink is?
Yes.
What, I mean, so what really is that, to go to Jane's point, what is really the cost to the study to go push that to the corner of Lisbon at the West 280 line?
Well, as Joe pointed out, he's correct. I think I'm getting a little weary standing here, sorry, but you have to have, you do have to have a planning horizon of 20 years. You can look further to 40, but it's gotta be within the realm of what can be served by Sussex. They're gonna look at that, with Sussex being the regional facility and only, being, and their planning horizon is they're only using 50% of their plant right now. Although it sounds like it's all purchased by Menominee Falls, but you can't look beyond that. And if you said, well, we're gonna develop that within, they'd bounce it and say, no, there's no way you're gonna, I don't know what your building permit rate is now, but I mean, just the 163 lots in the last year or so, you'd have to show that you're gonna develop that within, an X amount of time. So I don't think that's.
Then Sussex will send Lisbon a huge bill because they say we have to expand the treatment plant because you're gonna have all this development. So therefore, give me $30 million, and that's not outside of the realm of reality. So there's checks and balances this, and the first check and balance is Sussex, the next one is Sewer Pack, and the last one is DNR.
But Tom, if we go with
You
this,
can amend
this
it.
pink area here, are we gonna get a big $20 million bill from Sussex, to Joe's point?
No, you've,
We're not gonna allow it.
like I predicted, we'll get through this and we'll have all our flows tally. You're not gonna be over with the existing capacity that you have.
All right, so, Brian, what are your thoughts there?
I'm okay with the pink area.
Joe,
Same.
Sherry?
My only question with the pink area is, so there's a lot of existing property, developed property, say Mountain Shadows is in there. So from what you were just saying, within 20 years of this being approved, they would have to hook up.
No,
Okay, you just have to develop the undeveloped lands within the 20.
that's their litmus test of, what would the max come from this area be? And
Okay,
we're not going crazy beyond that, And by the way, we follow, when we come back, we'll follow property lines and, you have to actually, so.
We're not gonna put a main in beyond Richmond. I mean, in the,
I'm fine with
Right.
that area.
Sean,
Same thing.
Kurt,
Okay,
and I think Jane?
Well, my only concern is you got some older subdivisions outside of those pink boundaries. Like the Lindell Farms area, it's like, what if their septic start failing?
But if they can't be served by the gravity,
Yeah.
Then you put in lift stations.
You can always amend this too.
I was gonna say, we can amend it and look
Sure.
later, because we're eventually gonna have to get more capacity somewhere anyways, if we end up developing other areas, 20, 30, 40 years down the
Oh.
road, so.
You can always amend it,
No,
this is, this
There's
is,
no money.
this point in time, this study effort, this effort to give it our best shot, you can always amend it. And sewer pack issues, they'll issue their little report for one property as an amendment,
Green striper.
Yeah, so, yes, so don't think that it can't change after you do this.
I think we got some good consensus tonight and made some good progress. Dan, is there anything else that you will be upset with if we don't get to tonight or touch on?
Since we thought it was
I'll
gonna be a
just bring
short
up-
conversation, do we want to look at focus area 2?
I'm hearing that.
I think we can probably
You would-
hit focus area 2 and 3 in the next meeting, so let's
Sound
just
good?
combine.
I think
those.
two's gonna be very brief, but yeah,
Yeah.
3 is gonna be more in depth.
Sounds like a plan?
Is it?
So wait, so when is that then?
has not been
Well,
scheduled
we'll
yet.
discuss it.
I mean, are we thinking, we're thinking down the line, we'll figure.
Yeah,
And let's plan it strategically with, if, we think the plan commission meeting is going to go potentially 2 hours, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it in the same night.
Why don't we just do
necessarily.
2 right now? Cause
Joe Mama, it's 9 o'clock.
there's nothing in here that is really gonna change.
I mean,
I mean,
I kind of agree with you on that.
there's not a lot, there's not a lot of stuff to do in 2. Why don't we just do it?
Yeah, 2 is, you want,
move.
Up on the screen.
you want to hammer it out? Let's.
2 sounds great. Pull on the horn.
No, but there's not really,
So two would, tie into Coles, that is where there is an existing agreement that they put that sewer in deeper to serve this area, but,
Sussex has claimed that they've oversized the pipe at the Coles Interceptor, and that if we ever hooked into it, we'd have to pay what was $350,000 at the time, plus accumulated interest from that time in order just to hook into it, and then we'd have to extend sewer all the way down Silvernail, because they did not size the pipe, Silver Spring, sorry, Silvernail's where I live. Because of the fact that we did not have them size Alpine Hills appropriately to include us to extend off of Alpine Hills subdivision, we'd have to run a separate main up Silver Spring to hit those places. I hope I said that right.
no.
the fact that we're developing these two larger chunks of land without sewer, I mean, we don't have any plans to actually putting pipe in the ground over here. I mean, yeah, all right, we're all on the same page.
That sound like it.
All right, so 3 is gonna be a lot longer. We'll talk about that the next meeting.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Adjournment by-
I can't, no,
1 second, do we need adjournment from all? No,
I just need to know who made
Bob
the
made the
motion and
motion, Linda
seconded.
seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Which committee?
That's why I just asked her if we need one for each one.
Nope, we just need the one.
Okay.
10:28, we're out.
Or just keep going.